What is good, everybody? Well, not a lot today for the 49ers. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. Welcome to the Instant Reaction Podcast for week number 6 in the National Football League. Sloppy performance by the 49ers. We are going to get into all of it today. Before we do, I want to remind you, please rate, review, and follow the Gold Standard Podcast Network. Like and subscribe to the Gold Standard YouTube channel. Everything was there for the 49ers. Their worst effort of the season by a variety of measures, and yet they still had it in the game. Seconds left to go. 41-yard field goal by Jake Moody, and he misses it. He misses for the second time today, and you can't have that if you're the 49ers. You just can't have it. And I know they've played well. I get it. I know that they did a lot of good stuff, and they've been damn near flawless this season, but they were sloppy today. But your kicker's got to make that. And I'll say it, okay? I will say it. Robbie Gould makes that kick. He does. He might have missed other ones that Moody has made. Moody had a 57-yarder earlier in the season. Robbie Gould don't miss that kick, and that sucks. And that's how the winning streak ends. The 30-point streak is over. Christian McCaffrey is hurt. Deebo Samuel is hurt. Trent Williams was hurt. Deommodore Lenoir was hurt. This was a terrible Sunday for the 49ers. There's just no way to sugarcoat it. No way to sugarcoat it. Everything was bad about this game for the 49ers. The offense stunk. The team was not sharp all day long. All day long. Penalties. Both teams. More penalties and more penalty yards in this game than any game all year long. Combined 25 penalties for 124 yards in the game. The Niners had 12 penalties for 105 yards. Now, I admit, some of those were bullshit. On the final drive, the Browns had horrible penalties by the officials to extend that drive, but it doesn't matter because despite all of it, the 49ers had a chance to win if the kicker does his job at the end of the game, and he blew it. And that's it. That's the first loss. As Mr. J says, super sloppy for the 49ers. Just none of it was good today. There was no single aspect of I should say, the defense was good. I apologize for that. The defense was good. 19 points. Your defense did their job. But offensively for the Niners, I get it. There were injuries. I get it. But negative 12 yards for the offense in the third quarter. You couldn't gain a single positive yard? I don't care if Christian McCaffrey's hurt. I don't care if Deebo Samuel's hurt. Gain a yard. A yard. I'm not talking about score point. I'm talking about gain a single yard. You exhausted your defense. Multiple turnovers by the 49ers. Just terrible. A terrible performance by the 49ers. Waltony101 watching on my Twitch page says they went up 7-0. They got an interception and thought it was a wrap. If they went 14-0, if they went up 14-0, it might have been. Man, I get it. The 49ers have won a lot of games. They were 5-0. It's an AFC loss. This isn't like the end of the world here. I get it. But just a very, very, very frustrating game. Very frustrating. I don't know if they were riding high because of the Cowboys game. You know, I thought that would have kind of been mitigated because there was a fight pregame. I don't want to call it a fight. There was a fracas before the game. So I thought, like, hey, maybe that woke the 49ers up. It did not. They had the touchdown drive on the opening drive. And then after that, it was terrible. It was terrible offense. The Browns were getting penetration on every single play. Every one. Dalvin Tomlinson kicked the 49ers' ass all day long. All day. The 49ers are behind the chains all day in the second half, especially in this game. Negative yards on first down constantly. Here are the 49ers' drives in the second half. Interception. 3 plays, punt. 3 plays, punt. 3 plays, punt. Touchdown on a 1-play drive after Deommodore Lenoir made a huge pick and returned to the 8-yard line. 3 plays, -1 yard, punt. And then the drive at the end of the game, 9 plays, 52 yards, and the missed field goal. That ain't good enough. That is not good enough, and that's why you win. That's why you win. And Ben Taylor says Kyle is a bum. Let's calm down with that. Like, guys, didn't forget who, this is a bad game, but it is just a bad game. Okay. Let's not get crazy here. Spank says, why not try and score on that last drive? Moody was bad today. What the bleep? Kyle was scared. He was scared of the pass rush. The Browns had been dominating. He didn't want to do anything. If you take a sack there, then you're really in trouble. So I understand why that would have happened. I understand why Kyle did that. I really do. Moody's got to do his job. That's it. At the end of the day, Moody's got to do your job. Your kicker has got to make those. Has to. He missed one earlier in the game. You would have forgiven that, right? All's forgiven if he makes that kick. But he didn't. Obi-Wan49 says, didn't like Kyle Shanahan's plan today. Too much motion, 7-step dropbacks when sometimes you just needed to line up and make a play, not blaming him solely. The thing that Levin had talked about was if you run the ball, run it with motion against the Browns, because that is what they were weakest at. I felt like they weren't doing a ton of that today. Maybe they were. I could be remembering that wrong, but the fact is the Browns dominated the line of scrimmage. Absolutely dominated the line of scrimmage, so the 49ers couldn't run the ball. It was a punch in the mouth. 49ers are used to being the bullied. They got bullied today. Absolutely bullied. Punched in the mouth. Benjamin Bear says, I don't want to hear anyone blame this on Moody. The whole team failed throughout. Yes, Benjamin, I agree. The team failed. But even with that, your kicker makes a 41-yard kick. Excuse me. I'm so mad I can't even talk. And you win the game. Despite everything else, despite the refs, despite the injuries, despite all of it, you make that kick and he wins the game. So he gets blame. I agree. There's more blame than just that to go around, but he has to get some of the blame. Has to. Absolutely has to. Let's see. Ryan Aloy says, those last 3 terrible calls were insane. I've never seen a warning alert on Bleacher Report for betting. Explain this, NFL. There were some bad calls on that Browns final drive, and we can get to it. 3rd and 10, first of all, PJ Walker, incomplete pass to Elijah Moore, and they called to Sean Gibson for unnecessary roughness. It just flat out wasn't. They said it on the broadcast. Dean Blandino said it on the broadcast. Greg Olson said it on the broadcast. Gibson doesn't hit him in the head or neck area. He doesn't. He doesn't hit with the crown of his helmet. Nothing. It was a completely legal play. And that extended the drive. Now, look, the Browns are going to go for it on 4th down because they're losing, and they could still get the first down anyway, but it would have been 4th and 10. I sure as hell would have liked to see that scenario. I'll tell you that. A lot better than 1st and 10 at the 41, because don't forget, not only do you get the first down, you also get the yardage there. So that was a terrible play. 1st and 10, they called a holding on Charvarius Ward that I thought was bogus. That gave him 5 yards. Now that was on 1st down, so it was a little different, but that was a bad call. There were multiple bad calls by the officials. Nobody came to see you officiate today, but yeah, we had 25 or 24 combined penalties, most in a single game in the entire league this year. Sleepy 11414 says Kyle Shanahan coach scared. He wasn't aggressive at all. I think Kyle got spooked. I think as the game went along, Kyle got more and more afraid, especially with the injuries. If McCaffrey and Debo were still there, I think Kyle would have had a little more, but Kyle puckered, man. I think he absolutely did, as we're joined by Levin Black. Levin, just sloppy performance, just bad today by the 49ers. Injuries, sloppiness, just bad.
Everybody played bad. There's no aspect other than maybe the secondary played okay. Like the defensive line allowed 160 rushing yards. The offense, the offensive line, worst offensive line performance in Kyle Shanahan era, I think. The passing by Purdy, horrendous. He missed 4 or 5 long passes that could have easily been game changers. Was way off. Like no part of this game. And then you have Moody missing 2 kicks. That's why I was not happy that they were going to rely on a rookie kicker, because historically that's what they do.
I said it in the beginning of the game, beginning of the show. Robbie Gould hits that kick. Say what you want about Robbie Gould. I know he wasn't perfect. He can't kick from far away. That was a 41-yard field goal. That was barely longer than an extra point. You got to have it. You have to have it. And I'm not just blaming Moody, but he's got to make it.
Yeah, like Moody's got to hit that. And the 54 yarder he missed, like he had it by 10 yards. He missed it. He didn't have enough leg. It wasn't weather related. I don't think the weather is an excuse. Like the weather wasn't great, but this was not a terrible weather game. This was a mediocre weather game. Like there was a little bit of rain during one part and that's it. Like that's not going to be a good enough excuse for anybody in this game.
And I'll just say it, and you and I were disagreeing during the game. I think Brock had a bad game. I think this is clearly Brock's worst game. I think he had a bad game. And what did I say to you on Thursday? I said weather's going to be a factor. We don't know how Brock Purdy's going to play in the weather. We just because we haven't seen it. And he was bad. He missed Christian McCaffrey for a touchdown. He had George Kittle open one-on-one down the field and threw it terrible, just so far off that Kittle couldn't even make a play on the ball. The fumble, obviously, he had. This was just bad by Brock Purdy. It doesn't mean he can't be a good player. Doesn't mean he won't be a good player. It just means today, October 15th, Brock Purdy was bad.
Yeah, like we talked during halftime. Like at halftime, you were saying he was pretty much bad, terrible, and I was saying I wouldn't go quite that far. I think he was 7 of 12 at halftime.
Yep, he was.
And he missed the one Christian McCaffrey throw. The second half, on the other hand, that's about as bad as you can play. Like, he threw an interception. He had, I would say, 7 or 8 passes off the top of my head where he was way behind the receiver, just way off target. Yep. Like I said, like, yes, everybody's going to sing the praises of the Cleveland defense. That defensive line dominated this game.
Yes.
But if Purdy is accurate, the Niners get a bunch of points in this game because there were 4 or 5 plays that were going to go for, 40, 50 yards, maybe even touchdowns. Like multiple of them were definite touchdowns. So this is a game that the Niners should have had 30 plus, but Purdy was just not good at all.
How much time do you have? Do you have to run?
I got a few more minutes. I mean, it's kind of nothing's really going on. So.
All right, let's get to some super chats. Larkin, YouTube channel member. By the way, if you want to be a YouTube channel member, it's less than $3 a month. Get custom emojis, which I just put a bunch of new ones in, membership badges, priority comment response. Please support the channel. Larkin says, very nervous about McCaffrey and Debo going down. We don't know. I'll try and keep an eye on Twitter. If anybody sees it in the chat, obviously, as always, let us know. It's concerning for the 49ers. Very, very concerning going forward. Not just the loss. Like I said, that's one thing, but the injuries change a lot of things. Jason Walsh in this one says, Purdy was erratic. Love my guy. I love the guy, but that stunk. Erratic is the perfect word. Had a couple good throws, but then he was just spraying the ball. Just spraying it all over the place. And he did not look poised, Levin. This is probably the first time I didn't see him look totally poised. Case in point, and this was extremely, extremely frustrating. 49ers get the ball back. 3 minutes and 21 seconds left. You have the lead. Right? It's a 1-point game. You have the lead. All the 49ers need to do is get a couple of first downs, at least make the Browns use their timeouts. And they go Purdy incomplete, completion to Ayuk for 11 out of bounds. And then on 3rd and 11, they can't do it and they have to punt. And they used a grand total of 16 seconds. And the Browns didn't use a single timeout in the game. You can't have that.
Yeah, that drive I wouldn't necessarily put on Purdy because that drive got destroyed because the offensive line got destroyed on that first play and he had intentional grounding. Like there wasn't anything he could do on that play. Like Purdy deserves a lot of blame, but not that play, not that drive.
The drive was killed by the intentional grounding. Just take the sack.
Because he's getting tackled in 2 seconds.
Okay, then take the sack. You can't get intentional.
That would have been the same result. It would have been 2nd and 21. That's what intentional grounding is. It basically makes it a sack.
You can't have it, man. There's
nothing he could do on that when a guy comes unblocked. Like,
right.
I mean, we're nitpicking a single play, but whether he got sacked or whether it was intentional grounding, the result is 2nd and 21 and the drive was over. Like, that was the whole problem in this game. Like, if you made me pick one part of the game that was the worst, it was the offensive line. Purdy's a close second, but the offensive line, like how many drives, especially in the second half, before they could even run a play, it was either 1st and 15 or 1st and 20. I think there were 3 or 4 drives in the second half alone that started that way. Inexcusable. Like, and you had penalties. It wasn't just Burford. It wasn't just Trent Williams. There were penalties, I think, on 3 different offensive linemen. And then you throw on that when there weren't penalties, there were guys coming and getting after the running back or Purdy within 1 second of the snap. Like that interior defensive lineman Tomlinson, they called him out 3 or 4 times in this game, the announcers, because he was winning every single rep. The offensive line was horrendous. I said that this was the worst offensive line performance in the Shanahan era, and it might be much longer than that. Like, I can't remember a worse performance.
They were shook, and you could tell because they met with Forster on the sideline during the game. Jennifer Lee Chan tweeted it out. They all huddled up as they were getting their asses handed to them in the second half. Guess what? Didn't help. Didn't help at all. Chad Marshall, YouTube channel member, says, it seems like Kyle has no plan for when CMC goes out. Are we too dependent on too few of our studs? You had cluster injuries today, which is a killer, right? Debo, McCaffrey out. But, I mean, look, they put a drive together. We saw the last drive with Purdy. He went right down the field. And that was a chance. And really, if Moody makes that kick, Brock Purdy has a chance to dispel the entire narrative about him, right? Oh, he's a product of the system. He's got all these playmakers. Well, there was no Debo, no CMC. Your back was against the wall. They were losing, and he drove right down the field, and he did his job. He did what he needed.
On that drive, Purdy did his job.
Nobody's going to remember that because Moody missed the kick. He's not going to get credit for it, but he did his job on that one drive.
Right. So I will say I do think that this was going to be a Debo game, because you saw Debo got that run early in the game. And then even after he got injured, you saw multiple times that they had McLeod doing the exact same stuff, a bunch of pre-snap, and it wasn't working because he kept messing it up. So they stopped doing it. But I think the plan was this was a Debo game to thwart that pass rush. They were going to do a bunch of wide receiver screens and such to the outside to get away from that pass rush. And when he went out, I think that changed a lot. And then you throw on Christian McCaffrey on top of it. Look, they should have won the game. I'm not giving them an excuse. They don't get a pass, but that did affect things. And, oh, by the way, we haven't mentioned the thing that probably has my blood boiling the most. The refs on that last Cleveland drive, they don't score. The Niners win if they don't get those calls. So the refs gave them those last 3 points.
I mean, it certainly contributed, definitely, especially on the Tashawn Gibson. Because I'm sure Gibson went out of his way to hit the guy just like he did, which was a totally clean. But this is what happens, Levin. They tell the refs to err on the side of caution. If it looks bad, throw the flag, because the NFL ignored concussions for decades and got sued, and it cost them a bunch of money. That's just how it is. That's just facts. It's not a conspiracy. It's the NFL cares more about having to pay out money than who wins and loses any individual game. So they're always going to do that. They just are. And they should probably make that reviewable, but it's not.
All I'm saying is, can we get the Kansas City treatment, please? We're the great team in this situation. We're supposed to have the refs on our side like Kansas City does.
Somebody's got to start dating Taylor Swift. What can I tell you? Obi-149 says, they could have put it away early, but drops from Brandon Ayuk, a few positive plays called back due to penalties, and just threw off the offensive rhythm. Still had a chance. Yeah, they did. And that's how you can tell the 49ers are a good team, because they played their worst game I've seen them play in a long time, and they still should have won. So they are a good team. They just didn't play like it today. Yeah,
and like Cleveland has a very good chance now of, I would say, making the playoffs in the AFC. They're 3-2. They don't have the hardest of schedule remaining. So you're talking about a playoff team on the road, 1:00 start, and you should have won despite your offensive line playing as bad as you possibly can. Your quarterback playing as well, I guess you can't say as bad as he possibly can, because 4 turnovers is worse than what he did. So at least he limited the turnovers, but played about as bad as I think Brock Purdy's ever going to play. So you can put it that way. And you lost 2 of your star offensive players, and you had the refs make a couple bad calls, and your defensive line got dominated in the run game and gave up 160 yards rushing. And yet, despite all of that, you should have still won the game if your kicker just makes a 41-yard kick. And that's a playoff team in all likelihood in the AFC.
What have we been saying about the Eagles, or at least what I've been saying? Hey, they haven't looked good, but you know what? They found ways to win. That's exactly what I would have said about the 49ers today if Jake Moody had made a 41-yard kick. Unfortunately, he did not. Carlos M says, wish a few wasted first-round picks went to the offensive line. They got dominated, as we've talked about. Alejandro Sandoval, thank you very much. Dre Greenlaw was missed today. Niners weren't playing scrubs today. That Browns defense is legit. Yeah, I mean, granted, I think the Niners offense would have looked a little better if Debo and McCaffrey didn't get hurt, but you still have to move the ball. You can't have negative 21 yards in the third quarter. You just can't. You can't have it. Okay. At one point in the fourth quarter, Brock Purdy was 1 of 5 in the second half for 1 yard with an interception. The standard is, I don't know what the standard is, but it's higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, you could go out and kneel the ball every single down, and they would have had better results than what they had in the third quarter.
Right.
That's how bad it was. But I'm going to get going. I got one thing to say, and this game might have a lingering effect because of the injuries. This is a huge, I don't care what's said in the post game. We've talked about that. Tomorrow is going to be the time that we care about because that's when you're going to get the truth out of Kyle Shanahan. Mm-hmm. But it certainly seems like at this point, Debo will be out until at least after the bye week, which is just in a couple weeks, because the fact that he was ruled out so early tells me it's a more serious injury. Maybe he doesn't go on IR. Maybe he does, but I would guess at least a couple weeks. And then obviously the Christian McCaffrey, the good part is he went back in. The bad part is he's a running back and it's a back injury. Those tend to take a while to heal. So I could see him maybe missing a week, but at least I don't think that one is long term. But it's a huge week in terms of injuries because you also have Trent Williams. Like he made it through the game, so hopefully he doesn't miss time. But right. Ankle injuries sometimes get much worse the day after. So big week in terms of injuries, paying attention to him.
Shanahan called it an oblique/rib injury to McCaffrey, but thank you for hopping in here, 11. I appreciate it. I know you're at work, so we always appreciate you hopping in.
Yeah, I'm on break. Wink, wink.
Right. I already
we'll see ya.
See ya.